It's November 16, 2027. A brief newscast reports on the state of the world. Women have become infertile and no children have been born for 18 years. Most of the world's societies have collapsed, and in Britain all foreigners have been declared illegal immigrants and are rounded up by British military forces to be deported. Additionally, the youngest person in the world, the Argentine baby Diego, has been murdered by one of his fans when he refused to give them an autograph. The newscast is watched by a saddened and stunned crowd in a coffee shop by the streets. A man, Theo Ferran, enters the coffee shop, seemingly indifferent to the news or the crowd. He gets a cup of coffee and leaves. Just after he walks a few blocks away and stops to add liquor to his coffee, the coffee shop is blown up by a bomb. The act is then attributed to an underground guerrilla group known as the Fishes. Theo is at work but can't seem to concentrate. He is shaken by the incident and asks his boss that he leaves work early, under the excuse of mourning the death of baby Diego. He leaves to visit his friend, Jasper, who lives outside London. Jasper, a former political activist, now lives in seclusion in a well-hidden forest home growing variants of cannabis with his wife Janice, who is unable to move or talk. Jasper offers Theo some weed to smoke as he recounts his experience at the coffee shop, saying his ears still ring from the sound of the blast. Jasper reminds him that he is welcome to come live with them whenever he is tired of life in the city. The next day, Theo is kidnapped by the Fishes, the radical group suspected to have bombed the coffee shop. He is taken to a secret location, and when he is unmasked, he sees his former wife, Julian, who now leads the group. She and Theo have not seen each other for nearly 20 years after their son, Dylan, died in a flu epidemic. She first tells him that the Fishes were not responsible for the bombing of the cafe the previous day. Then one of her group members angrily chips in, claiming that the government bombed the cafe, trying to create public discontent for their group. Julian asks for Theo's help in securing transit papers for a member of their group who is an immigrant. Theo's cousin, Nigel, happens to be very influential within the government, so she tells him to use this connection to get the papers for them and promises him a huge amount of money in exchange. Theo, seemingly broke, goes to visit Nigel and is able to convince him to get the papers, but Julian specifically states that Theo himself must accompany the refugee who the papers are meant for, should in case they encounter the police along the way. Theo agrees and he joins her associate Luke, the immigrant, Key, and her midwife, Miriam, as they drive to the southern coast of England. At this point, Theo doesn't have any idea of who the immigrant is or what happens when they get south of England. He just wants to get the deal over with, so he can take his money and leave. Along the way, Theo and Julian start to catch up on old memories, and they almost get lost in the moment until a burning car comes blocking the way and they are attacked in a forested area by a large mob. In the course of the attack, Julian is shot in the neck and she dies. Kindly like this video and subscribe to our channel to support our work and also get updated on new content. Thank you. As they flee the scene of the attack, they are pulled over by the police, who are suspicious of the car and the speed at which they are moving. When asked for their papers, Luke pulls out a gun and kills both policemen. Theo is shocked and confused at this point and asks why Luke had shot the policeman instead of asking for help. They get a bit far away from the scene of the shooting and a short funeral is held in the forest for Julian. Theo breaks off temporarily from the service and wanders to a part of the forest so he could cry alone. He is deeply hurt by Julian's death. Luke is able to find another car and drives them to a safe house on a farm where the Fishes gather. While at the farm, Miriam calls Theo, telling him that Key would like to speak with him privately. He goes to see her and she reveals to him that she is 8 months pregnant. She also tells Theo that Julian had told her that she could only trust him. The Fishes hold a meeting to choose a new leader and also decide what to do with Key. They conclude, despite Theo's objections, that Key should stay with them until the child is born. Theo thinks the pregnancy should be made public so Key can get proper health care, but the Fishes think that the British government would seize both Key and the baby for their own political ends. They leave the decision to Key, who agrees to stay in the custody of the Fishes till she gives birth. Later that night, Theo awakens to a commotion outside. 2 of the men who attacked the travelers that day have come to the safe house, one of them badly wounded. The other is one of Julian and Luke's operatives, Patrick, who Theo recognizes from the time he was kidnapped. Theo sneaks and eavesdrops on their conversation. He discovers that the attack on the car and Julian's murder were both arranged by Luke and the Fishes, who wish to use the baby for their own political ambitions, as it's the first baby to be born in over 17 years. He also finds out that Luke and the others plan to kill him the next day. He quietly awakes Key and Miriam and convinces them to leave with him immediately, explaining how Luke and the Fishes orchestrated Julian's death. Theo steals a car and disables the other vehicles around to prevent the likelihood of a chase. The car turns out to be faulty and difficult to start. They narrowly escape the farm after jump-starting it. Theo then takes them to Jasper's house. He believes the house to be safe and out of the sight of the fishes. While there, Jasper makes arrangements for Key to meet a ship called the Tomorrow, a vessel belonging to a group called the Human Project, a collection of scientists based offshore in Portugal and dedicated to restoring human fertility. Jasper arranges for his friend, Sid, who is an immigration officer, to help Key, Miriam, and Theo enter the refugee camp at Bexhill. From there, they will make arrangements for Key to slip into the English Water Channel near Bexhill to meet the ship of scientists. Not too long after, the fishes find Jasper's hidden home, setting off the alarms. Jasper alerts them and lets Theo take his car, describing an escape route through the bushes for them to follow. From nearby, Theo watches as Jasper refuses to give the fishes any information and is cruelly murdered by Luke. Miriam tries to comfort Theo, who angrily rebuffs her and orders her back into the car. Theo drives them to a nearby abandoned school where they have to hide out and wait for Sid. While there, Miriam talks of her past work as a midwife and how she witnessed the beginning of worldwide female infertility 18 years ago and how she is lucky now to be about to witness the first birth in a long time. Sid arrives, acting very intimidating at first, but takes them in his truck when Theo remembers and says a code word Jasper told him. As they approach the refugee camp, Sid is puzzled and questions why they would want to willingly give themselves to detention as most people struggle to get out. Seeing their hesitation to answer, he tells them that he is not concerned with whatever their reason is, and he just wants to do right by his good friend Jasper, who he jokes has the best weed in town. They get to the refugee camp and Key begins to have minor contractions. Sid asks what the problem is and Miriam answers that Key is sick. He manages to hand them over to the officers there and they get on a bus that takes them in. While on the way, Key's groans begin to get louder and it looks like she's going into labor. The guards notice Key's noise and they come along to keep her shut. Miriam doesn't want them to know Key is pregnant, so she begins acting dramatic to distract the guards from Key. A guard slaps her face and orders her off the bus. Theo and Key manage to enter the refugee camp with her pregnancy undetected, and there they meet a woman named Marichka who takes them to a gloomy-looking room. Immediately, Key lies on the ground and shouts at Theo to get the woman out of the room. Marichka leaves and right there on the floor Key gives birth to the first child in the world in 18 years. The next morning they are met by Marichka and Sid, who tells them about an uprising that has taken over Bexhill. The fishes have broken into the city and the National Guard have been called out to restore order, so they will have to leave for the boat earlier than scheduled. Sid notices Key trying to hide something, still suspicious from the previous day. He goes ahead to take a look. On seeing the baby, both Sid and Marichka are astonished. Sid, having seen Theo wanted on TV the night before, plans to turn him into the government for a large reward, as he is a prime suspect from the attack on the road that involved the killing of 2 policemen. With Marichka's help, they manage to escape from Sid and she finds them a temporary place to stay with her people. She is also supposed to take them to a boat that will get them to the scientist ship at Bexhill Harbour. They leave for the city along with an armed guard for protection and are headed for the harbour. They are quickly found by Luke and his activist gang members. They take Key and her baby and leave Theo and Marichka to be executed by Patrick. He shoots the guard in the head, and just as he is about to kill Theo, a squad of soldiers come shooting at the activists, splitting them up and causing Theo and Marichka to escape. Theo goes looking for Key. He sees Luke take her into a shabby-looking apartment building, putting her at high risk as the National Guard is after Luke and his gang, causing the building to be under fire from the military, who have no idea that the first child to be born in a long time also is in the building. While searching for Key and Luke, Theo sees Patrick being hit and killed by gunfire. Theo finds Key with Luke, who is shooting at the British forces outside. Luke explains to Theo how beautiful it is to hear the cry of a baby, narrating that he cried as he held the baby. As Theo attempts to take Key and the baby out, Luke opens fire in Theo's direction. Just as he escapes the shot, an explosive is launched at Luke and he blows up with everything around him. As Theo and Key walk out of the building, everyone who sees the baby stands in shock and the fighting immediately stops. Soldiers stop shooting and some of them begin to break into prayer. The two walk outside the building and begin to walk away. They somehow find their way back to Marichka, who takes them to the harbour and shows them the rowboat she's been holding for them. Theo tries to convince her to come along, but Marichka refuses to leave with them and pushes the boat out. The two make it out to a nearby buoy which marks the rendezvous point, where they are meant to see the Tomorrow ship. As they wait, jets fly overhead and begin a bombardment of Bexhill. Key sees blood in the bottom of the boat and panics, thinking it's her blood, but Theo tells her he was hit in the abdomen when Luke shot at him a while ago in the building. Theo has just enough time to teach Key how to burp the baby, and she tells him that she'll name her after Theo's son, Dylan. Just then Theo loses consciousness and the Tomorrow ship arrives. The end. Before we go, I'd like to leave you all with some moral lesson. We can learn from Theo that to achieve anything great we need determination. Despite the setbacks that came along the way, Theo made sure that he always found a way to protect Key and her baby, and this led to the birth of the first baby in the world in 18 years and also hope for the continuation of the human race. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment and subscribe.